Hi everybody, welcome to Power Up. It's Friday, so I'm here to do a Friday special again. I apologise I've not put a video out for the last couple of weeks. I've been away on holiday or vacation for our States friends, and I've been a little bit busy on some Fridays, so it's been a couple of weeks since I put one out, but I'm back now and I thought I'd try and do something. So this week what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to pick a particular issue out of the Flow community forum at the moment, because I see the same question come up a couple of times and I see the same approach that people are trying to take, and I just want to talk about that for a bit. So one thing I see a lot of people doing is trying to get items from SharePoint, and then they struggle with filtering those items out. So quite often we don't want to use all the items in our SharePoint list, but we want to use a subset of them. So very often the approach seems to be that we go get items from SharePoint and then we do use an apply to each and then run a condition that if the item matches a certain condition, go and do some activity on it. Whilst this works and it's a legitimate way of doing it, I've got a few issues with it. The first one is we're working with a much bigger data set than we need to. We're bringing a lot of information back from SharePoint. Now in a flow or a background process, we don't generally care how much data we're moving around, and we don't generally care how long the process takes, because it just runs its course in the background and that's absolutely fine. In some cases we do care. So if we're going to run our flow as a background process or a middle tier process for a Power App, then maybe we do care because we want it to come back to the user as quick as possible. It's probably a small subset of use cases for Flow, but I think it's a valid one. So in that case, we really do care about the code being as efficient as possible and to finish as efficient as possible. Now, even though we don't generally care how much data we're moving around and we don't generally care how long our flow takes, I think it's still good of us to care and actually do the best we can. The first reason being is we want to be good citizens, okay? If we're moving megabytes of SharePoint list data around for our flow, then that's okay, but that's going to take a hit on Office 365 and Microsoft services. We may not care. It's a few megabytes here or there. You know, what difference is that going to make to the behemoth of computing power that Microsoft has? Well, that may be, but what if your flow runs 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times? What if you've got a business with 10,000 users running your flow 10 times, 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times? You can see where it soon adds up. So what we want to do is we want to be good citizens, okay? We want to actually reduce the amount of data we're moving around Microsoft servers so that performance is better for everybody. We don't want to waste computing power. It's not ecologically friendly. We don't want to waste it. It's not very friendly for the rest of us. We want to make sure we have the best performance we can. So it is important that we try to be as good citizens as we can do. So what we're going to talk about today is how to actually go access and filter some of that data. So I'm going to try and run some tests and we'll build this now, see how it works. But what I want to do is I want to compare how filtering data at source, so if we filter the data in our Get Items action, I want to compare that to the time it takes to run the same procedure by getting all the items from SharePoint and then going through and processing. Now this is one where we need some kind of scale, we need a lot of information to be able to separate the distances. We tend to find these run on marginal gains, so if you run it over 10 items you may not see a big difference. Run it over 10,000 items you may see a bigger difference. So let's sit down, see what we can figure out and see if there's a nicer, neater way of us filtering our data to perform our activities. So the first thing I'm going to do is build a flow. Let's go and build a flow. Let's see how this works. Let's try and do it with two parallel branches. One branch is going to load all items and then use an apply to each and a conditional filter, and the other one's going to filter the items within the get items and go and run the process afterwards. All we're going to do is write out the title of a list item for as many as we can do, and let's see if we can see a visible difference on how long that takes to run. But let's go and do that now. Okay, so let's go and create a new flow. Just have a manual trigger. A new step. Put a little compose in there. The reason I'm putting this compose in here is I want to do a parallel branch straight away, so I need some action to be able to do my parallel branch off. Actually, I could do it in here. Okay, so let's add a step. Let's do a get items. Let's go into my insider site. Let's go to my Microsoft Roadmap 365. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to go in fact, let's change top count to, let's make 2000. Let's have a quick look at inside the site, and let's see how many items we actually have in here. Oops, on site contents. So this has 872 items in it, so that feels like a good candidate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to filter out all of the in development items in here, and then we'll go and run a compose action on it. Okay, so if we look into the list, we can see we've got our items in here. In fact, I'm going to do a third test as well, and let's show all items. Let's do a third test, and let's reduce the columns we bring about. So again, we're really reducing the data down. So let me save view as reduce data. So in this view, all I want here is the title and the status. Okay, so back to my flow. So we'll do 3 parallel branches here, and let's see how it goes. So there's only 1,000 because there's only 800 items in there. Okay, so let's go and add a parallel branch. Let's do another get items. Pick the same list and the same site. Now, what's going to be interesting on this test, and I don't know the answer to this right now, but it's going to be interesting about whether the parallel branches truly work in parallel or whether they kind of alternate between processes. I'm going to assume they truly work in parallel, but let's see what we get out of it. So in here now, so I'm going to put in a filter here. So I'm going to say where status equals in development. Okay. Top count 1000. Let's keep it fair. And on our third parallel branch, let's do another get items. Let's rename these as well. Let's call this full data, filtered data, filtered data with reduced columns. With that, let's add a life, choose our list, and in this case we're still going to filter in the same way. OData filter. So this uses a OData filter query. So if you're coming from a development background, you can think this to be an equivalent to the way you filter items with REST queries. It follows the same procedures, and that's where it comes from. But it's slightly different to the expression language we use, in which case we need to pass in the field name. So this is the internal name of the SharePoint field. So for example, if I go, status might not be a very good example. Let me go to a different view. We need to be aware of internal names and external names. So if we look at this field that says item GUID, and if I go and just do a group by GUID, I can see here that I've got, it says group by item GUID without a space. Now my display name has a space in it, okay? Because I'm a good SharePoint developer, I create my columns without a space, then I go back and I add the spaces in. If you don't, then you get this horrible format, OX20, something like that. I can't remember now. So you end up with this format in here, so I think it's just that. So we want to try and avoid that. So when you create columns in SharePoint, please, please, please always create them without spaces, and then go back and rename your display name so it makes sense. You're going to love yourself later for that. One of the paradigms we have in the office is be good to your future self. Okay, so if you do it well, you'll be thankful after. So we have status And then we have EQ equals, we can have GT, which is greater than, LT, less than, and various other methods there. So I'm going to do status equals in development. It's going to be case sensitive, and I need to wrap this in a single quote. It might be a bit difficult for you to see there. Let's just zoom in a little bit. I tend to zoom out when I do my flows. Makes it easier for me to see what's going on. Top count 1000, let's do that again. And this time I'm going to do limit columns by view, and I'm going to limit it by reduce data. Okay, let me just save this. Oh, I need to give it a name. Oops. Power up Friday SharePoint special. Let's save that. Oh, got an error. Not valid, cannot end with a space. Did I put a space at the end? Interesting, I don't have a full stop at the end of it. Oh, it's this one. Apologise, it's not the name, it's this one here. Can't have a full stop at the end of your action names. There you go. It's nice to leave these errors in because you come across the stuff that we see that throws an error. Oh yeah, I got it. So let me go back. Make sure that's saved. And go back. Come back into edit. These actions don't always refresh, so because I created the column there, so here you go, now I can do reduce data. So that's an interesting first test. So I've just got three differences here. So get all items, get items filtered, and get items filtered with limited columns. I'm just going to save this. I'm not going to do anything with these, let's just see what happens. Let's just test this now. I'll perform the trigger action, and let's see how quick these run. See if we can see any difference. So straight away we can see this took 2 seconds, this took 1 second, this took 1 second. So that's helpful. We can see on the output here, I've got to click to download it because there's so much of it. Click to download it, so much of it. And here, actually, it's giving me the whole body straight away because there's obviously literally enough data for me to work with. So let's actually take this. Let's save this page. Paste that in here. Let's save this. Let's see how big this file is. Let's go to my desktop. Demo. So it's big data. Let's go into this one, let's download this one. See how much we get here. Save as mid data. Let's go to the last one here. So I mean, straight away, this is just easier to work with. I can even see what's going on here. I know exactly what I've got. Straight away, I can see it's easier to consume. Let's call this small data. So I've got 3 text files there. You probably just saw a quick glimpse on what we have. I'll go back to my desktop and demo. Look at the different file sizes. So the big data, and I just got all the items from SharePoint, 2 megabytes, 2,130 kilobytes, 2 megabytes in size. By restricting down the query, I've gone down to 678 kilobytes. And by reducing the number of columns I bring back down, I'm only moving 232 kilobytes. So actually, for the information that I'm interested in using, I only need 1/10 of the data to be moved around than I'm getting for my initial query. So straight away, that gives us the benefit. Now, if you imagine we had 10,000 items rather than okay, let's imagine we have 800 items. Okay, so let's times 2 megabytes by 10. 20 megabytes are moving around rather than 2 megabytes. These marginal gains start to stack up, and this is going to have an impact on the environments we work in. So it really is worthwhile as going through. But that's not the end of it. That's not everything that we need to focus. That is just the time for us to go and get the initial data. Okay? So what we want to do now is we actually want to write out the title of each of the items. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm now going to have to do a apply to each. And I'll have to go on the value, the list of items, add an action. I need to put in a condition, and I need to say if the item status is equal to in development. Oh, hang on, what have we got here? Look at this. We've got the new expression formatter. This is great. I've not had a chance to play with this yet, but I've been waiting for this for a long time. I also build logic apps, so we've had this for a while there, but bringing this in, this is awesome. So I'm very, very happy with this, and I'm glad to see this in my tenant. We'll do another video on this another time. So anyway, back to what we're doing. So if status is equal to in development, then I want to compose. We'll keep it nice and simple, and we just want to write out the item title. Okay, so that's all we want our flow to do. Now, look how complicated this is. Get items, apply to each, condition, compose. Well, because I've done my filtering here, I know all the items that are coming back are in development, so I don't need to put that check in. All I need to do is apply to each, value, add action, compose, and write out the title, filtered data title, yeah. Oops, sorry, that should be up here. So filtered data and write it out. I don't need to do a check because I know, like I just said, I know that they're all in development. And it's the same over here as well. I don't need to do a check over here. I can just apply to each from value. And I want to do a compose. And I want to write out the screen. I want to write out the title. Okay, so there's my three actions. So they all do the same thing. They're all going to get the in development items and they're going to write out the title. So let's save and run this, and let's see how quick these go. So this one's working on 872 items, this is working on 278, this is working on 278 as well. Let's see if this makes a difference. Now I did notice that this apply to each started first. That's probably because it got its data first. It probably got its data back from SharePoint first because it was reducing the amount of data it had to receive. So that did start first. 40 seconds. I do find the apply to each can be very, very slow. If anyone knows why, then please let me know. You can set some concurrency controls up in there, so it runs each one independently, so it doesn't wait for one to finish before it moves on. I'm not doing that here, so we're going for a minute at the moment. Sometimes it runs quick and sometimes it runs really, really slow. We'll just wait for that to finish. We're a minute in. I hope it gives me more information than just a minute. I could put some time controls in here to actually time it properly. Completed. Right, let's see how long that takes. Start the timer. Completed. So there wasn't an awful lot in it, to be honest, between these two filtered versions. They were pretty close. The applied to each definitely came in first when we reduced the columns. I guess the difference between 600 kilobytes and 200 kilobytes is more negligible, but going up to 2 megabytes has a bigger impact. So like I said, it's marginal gains. Ramp that up to 8,000, 10,000, 100,000 items, and you can really see the benefit of reducing your data set in your corpus at the earliest possible opportunity. As a developer, that's my general rule. Filter as early as possible. The smaller the data sets you can work with, the better your life's going to be. But it's still going. How long is this going to take? Right, okay. Sorry, got a little bit bored of waiting there, so moving back on to where we're at, and we can see that it's finally finished. So there's a clear difference there, okay? So we can see it took less than 2 minutes, and around about 7 minutes for the big data reply to each. Now, that really is quite significant, so I think we've proved our point here that we really should be thinking about at what point we apply our filters. It even looks like it's got false. Okay, so that's true. Go through here straight away. We just have all of our inputs going through them. It makes life easier. And this is so much easier to read as well. Look how easy this is compared to having the extra conditioning. So that's my session today. I hope that is useful. I hope that makes sense. I hope it just reinforces the fact that if you can do your filter at the point of getting your items, it really makes a difference. And especially if you're doing your flows from Microsoft Power Apps, because when you want that user interaction, you need it to come back as quick as possible. Users aren't going to sit there with a little dialing spinner for 7 minutes waiting to find the relevant items. So hope that helps. I'll post this up and hopefully reference some posts in the Microsoft Flow community, but I look forward to your feedback. Thank you very much.